Why are some industries highly profitable while others completely struggle to generate sustainable returns? Well, welcome to this executive masterclass on industry structure. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. Look, whether you're a seasoned executive, a consultant, or a highly focused candidate preparing for your CSCA examination, we are going to elevate your understanding today. We're moving way beyond basic textbook definitions and stepping right into high-level strategic analysis. Because the organizations you work for, they don't compete under identical conditions. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how industry structure dictates competitive behavior and ultimately sustainable profitability.
Okay, let's take a super quick look at our roadmap. We are going to tackle the fundamental strategic question, explore the four competitive worlds, analyze moats, apply all this to a CSCA mini case, and then finish up with some executive reflections. Let's dive in.
Part 1. The strategic question, focusing on profitability and competition.
So back to that ultimate boardroom question. Why do some industries practically print money while others are locked in a constant grinding struggle just to break even? This is literally the crucible of executive decision-making. And here's the secret. The answer doesn't just lie in having a better product. It almost always lies in the actual structure of the industry itself. That structure dictates how intense the competition is, how difficult it is for rivals to enter your market, and critically, how much pricing power you actually possess.
Now, let me give you a brilliant memory trick, especially if you're sitting for the CSK exam soon. Just remember this progression: many to few to one. As we progress from many competitors down to just one dominant player, the barriers to entry rise. And as those barriers rise, your pricing power and your profit potential increase dramatically. Lock that sequence into your mind. It's going to be your anchor.
Moving on to Part 2, the four competitive worlds. We're going to explore these specific market structures now.
Take a look at this strategic landscape. It's fascinating because it shows exactly how the number of firms in a market directly correlates with your ability to control prices. If you have many firms with absolutely no product differentiation, you have zero pricing power. None. But if you are the only firm with a unique offering, your pricing power is absolute. Remember, a strategy that succeeds brilliantly in one of these environments could be a complete disaster in another.
Let's start with the absolute harshest environment: perfect competition. In this world, you've got many buyers and many sellers dealing in identical, homogeneous products. Think of agricultural commodities. Imagine hundreds of farmers all selling the exact same identical wheat. Because there are practically no barriers to entry here, you are entirely a price taker. You possess zero pricing power, and you are at the total mercy of the open market.
Now, listen closely because I see candidates fall into this massive CSCA exam trap all the time. Do not assume firms can differentiate themselves in this structure. You just can't. If you encounter an agriculture or commodity scenario on the exam, you have to remember that survival here dictates a strict, relentless focus on operational efficiency and cost leadership. You cannot market your way out of perfect competition, right? You literally just have to cut costs to survive. Okay, stepping one level over, we find monopolistic competition. We still have many competitors and low barriers to entry here, but the game fundamentally changes because of one magic word: differentiation. By adding product differentiation, branding, and customer loyalty into the mix, businesses like local coffee chains, restaurants, and clothing brands carve out a moderate amount of pricing power, even in a super crowded space. In this world, non-price competition is everything. You're competing on the customer experience, your location, and your unique quality.
Next, we enter the heavyweights, the oligopoly. This is actually one of the most heavily tested structures you'll see. When you look at a market and observe just a few massive players dominating the whole thing, like 4 major airlines, the big automotive manufacturers, or a handful of telecommunications giants, you have entered an oligopoly. The barriers to entry here are extremely high, which gives these few dominant firms significant market and pricing power.
But again, a huge exam trap here. Students frequently underestimate competitor interdependence in this structure. In an oligopoly, you can't make a single strategic move, like, say, changing a ticket price, launching a massive marketing campaign, or innovating a new product, without anticipating an immediate reaction from your rivals. You are always playing a high-stakes game of strategic chess. Things like tacit coordination and avoiding destructive price wars, those are constant boardroom priorities.
Finally, at the extreme right of our spectrum sits the monopoly.
One single dominant seller, virtually no substitutes, and extremely high barriers to entry. Think of public utilities like electricity distribution or your local water services. Because they are the sole provider, they possess substantial, almost absolute market power. However, their biggest strategic challenges usually aren't rival competitors. Instead, they face fierce government regulation, intense political pressure, and heavy public scrutiny. They really have to focus on reputation management.
All right, part 3, moats and pricing power, focusing on those barriers to entry.
We have to ask a vital executive question here. How do these dominant firms protect their massive profit margins from new, hungry challengers? Well, they do it by building moats. These barriers to entry act as structural walls around your business castle. Think about commercial aircraft production. A new entrant faces enormous capital requirements, the need to achieve massive economies of scale, strict government regulations, advanced patents, proprietary technology, deeply entrenched brand loyalty, and highly specialized distribution networks. These barriers literally dictate how difficult market entry is. High barriers protect incumbents, low barriers attract aggressive new rivals.
Burn this ultimate executive shortcut into your memory right now. As you successfully reduce competitive intensity through these structural moats, your pricing power and your profit potential absolutely skyrocket. Competition goes down, pricing power goes up. It is beautifully simple, but absolutely crucial to understand.
Let's move to part 4, a CSCA mini case application. Let's test those strategic instincts of yours.
On the exam, you are going to see dozens of scenarios just like this, so let's do a rapid-fire case study right now. Imagine you're consulting for an industry characterized by this profile. There are just 3 dominant players controlling the entire market. Entering this space demands massive, almost prohibitive capital requirements, and on top of that, the incumbents engage in significant advertising expenditures to maintain an iron grip on consumer brand loyalty.
So based on this evidence, I want you to diagnose the environment. Which structure is it? Are the barriers to entry high or low? Do they possess pricing power? And critically, must they carefully consider their competitors' reactions before making a strategic move?
If you confidently said oligopoly, you are spot on. You saw the 3 dominant firms and those very high capital requirements, and you knew exactly where we were. The barriers are high, pricing power is significant, and yes, absolutely, strategic interdependence is paramount here. Firms must constantly anticipate competitors' reactions. If you got that right, you are totally on track. Be prepared to apply this exact same rapid-fire logic to agriculture for perfect competition or to water utilities for monopolies.
And finally, part 5, executive reflections and adopting the consultant's mindset.
Look, there is a massive difference between just reading a textbook and actually consulting for a C-suite. The amateur gets distracted by simply counting the number of competitors, but the seasoned executive, the expert consultant, they zero in immediately on the deeper dynamics. How intense is the rivalry? How easy is it to enter? Who actually holds the pricing power? And how sustainable are those profits over the long term?
Whenever you face an industry structure question, whether on the CSCA exam or in a real boardroom, methodically run through these golden rules. Start with the number of firms, sure, but quickly move to product differentiation. Assess the entry barriers, determine who holds the pricing power, gauge the intensity of the rivalry, and then synthesize all of that to figure out exactly what strategic response is required. Is it operational efficiency, or is it strategic positioning and innovation?
I want to leave you with a few executive reflection questions to take back to your own organizations today. Challenge your assumptions about your current industry structure. Anticipate how your specific rivals are going to react to your moves tomorrow. And finally, ask yourself, how are you going to build stronger structural moats around your business? You now possess the analytical tools to diagnose any industry in the world. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer lecture, and I can't wait to see you in our next masterclass.